of mechanical engineering or computer science, he or she was free to study any course of her or his liking. Anyway, so that's why I feel that most of the points which NEP has covered, and they have covered very beautifully, I would say. I have read the NEP document thoroughly multiple times, probably more than what we have read in last few years about any textbook or any research paper also. And I have been a part of certain discussions or deliberations where we had discussed about NEP also. But anyway, today my topic is very precise and controlled. So let me start with my topic itself and allow me to share the screen. I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So basically, uh, as I'm told, the mandate of the FDP is direction and dimensions of accreditation criteria in the light of NEP for HEIs. And I'm basically supposed to talk on institutional restructuring and consolidation, and I like to specifically focus on role of technology in education. And when I say role of technology in education, by education I mean not only dissemination of education, but assessment of education also, and including the accreditation process also. So that's what is what I'll plan to cover. And I wanted this session to be interactive. So at any point of time, any person has any query, I'll just request her or him to raise hand. Uh, do not write down a message in the chat box, because if too many messages come in the chat box, as a speaker that distracts me. When you raise your hand, I'll immediately maybe come back to you and allow you to ask a question so that we can keep on discussing. I have plenty of content in this presentation, but I have designed this presentation more in a modular manner. So I can finish at any point of time depending upon the time limits or maybe what you want to learn or what you don't want to learn. I can also vary the pace at different modules depending upon again the time frame and your interest or your likes or dislikes. So that's why I wanted to keep it very open as per the mandate of NEP, I would say. NEP also wanted to keep everything very open. So I also wanted to keep this talk very open. So I'll start with showing one glimpse of my campus actually. This is what we call as a lecture hall tutorial complex of IIM Jabalpur. And this is one of the iconic buildings of the campus. And it has multiple capacity lecture hall. Like this middle one is the largest one, having capacity of more than 600. At the background is the students' hostels, what we call as hall of residences. So this one, I think you can see my pointer. This is final year student hostel, single seater. At the back, there is a dormitories, triple seater for first year and second year. This is a postgraduate hostel with both accommodation for married students as well as unmarried students. And at the back, which unfortunately I'm not able to cover, is the girls' hostel. I have organized my presentation in the I'll just start with because one of the key words of the national education policy is education, and the middle word also. So I'll focus on education first, followed by NEP 2020. Then I'll talk about principles of NEP 2020, visions of NEP 2020. Then I'll come to the specific topic, that is institutional restructuring consolidation. And I'll talk about, for example, teaching, role of teacher, modern education, and the role of or importance of technology in education. So that's what I have, and I have now approximately 1 hour 50 minutes with me, maybe slightly less. I'll leave the time in between also for you to ask some question, and I'll try to finish early slightly so that we can have some discussions if we are not able to finish discussion in between my lecture. So let's start with education. Actually, I think everybody knows education, but I wanted to put education in a different perspective. So basically, I would say this is something which would help realize any individual his or her full potential. Okay, so I say that education is fundamental. That helps or that trains or that ultimately maybe forces somebody to realize the full human potential. And when somebody realizes the full human potential, when I say everybody realizes the human potential, will be able to develop an equitable and just society. And only then we can vouch that we cannot move in any direction except the national development. For national development, if I go backward, we must need an equitable and just society. It should be like balance. Uh, it should not happen that one section of society is privileged at the cost of other, and that is only possible when everybody realizes his or her potential. And I would say education is the tool for achieving this. Like this, I think everybody would have read in multiple forms of literature that if you want to defeat a country, you can defeat a country in a battle, in a war, anyway. But if you want to defeat or if you want to spoil a country, the easiest way is to spoil the education system. So if the education system is spoiled, not only that country will be defeated or it will be lost, even the future generation will be lost. So there will not be any scope of recovering or bouncing back from there. And that's what probably we have also faced during the British period by the Macaulay's education policy, which was designed to create our creative skills. I would say the Indian education system at the old ages at Takshila, Nalanda, etc., that was very creative, but that was killed and it was made like more like a like chain reaction or cyclic type of thing where people were not allowed to think on their own and they were just doing like mundane or very much mechanical tasks. So when I say again, when I say about education, the best thing about universal high quality education is the best way to develop as well as maximize any country's talent and resources. So that means we not only need high quality education, but that education should be universally. When I say universal education, it means that it should be available and accessible to all people without any biases, without any restrictions. I'm not talking about any factors, and I'm not going to make any political statement that whether the education should be cheap or education should be costly. I would only say it should be accessible by whatever mode we have. And we have multiple solutions. It's not that there's only one solution. And that led to the Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted by India in 2015. And the purpose was to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education. And in the process, the more important purpose was to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. This was an objective which was planned some 6 years, 6.5 years back to achieve in a 15-year time frame and inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So if you look at the education in last many years, there have been significant changes in the knowledge landscape, particularly with the new and new scientific tools which have come, particularly the disruptive innovations which are there in the form of big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, smart manufacturing. That has changed to a very large extent what we understand about education actually, or more importantly, what is the meaning of knowledge. It has led to a paradigm shift. Okay, and I think everybody is maybe willingly or unwillingly has been trained about the importance of these factors because of COVID-19 and the like online classes for last 2 years. Nobody has thought of this thing probably in March 2020 also. But now people are talking that this is a new normal. So we have to be trained on that factor also. This has also led to one very important factor, which we appreciate or we don't appreciate. There are always different schools of thoughts and people argue when we talk about that because of these technical or technological advances, the many unskilled jobs would be taken by machines. So people, I teach, for example, smart manufacturing also. I teach 3D printing also. So people ask me this question, particularly students, that what is going to happen to the jobs? Are we going to kill the jobs? My answer is that we are not killing the jobs, but we are changing the profile of the jobs. So when we say unskilled jobs have been taken over by machine, and that means we require machines. So our job has been upskilled from unskilled jobs to high skilled jobs. So it's not that people are not, yes, there happens a time when this changeover happens, there are job losses, but then new and new types of platforms come up. Like, for example, if you look at these domains, nobody was talking about these terms, big data, machine learning. Now, majority of the Indian engineers, particularly computer science engineers, why computer science, even non-computer science engineers also, they're working on like machine learning, AI, big data. I remember when I was doing my, I think I was finishing my master's actually, late 80s and early 90s, sorry. The 3D printing has just come. And in next few years, when I finish my PhD, people have started discounting 3D printing. People have started discounting that 3D printing doesn't have a future. So in fact, I was on the verge of getting a postdoc opportunity at that point in one of the leading organizations which deals with 3D printing. But I was told that 3D printing doesn't have future. So don't go into that particular domain. Or why even 3D printing? I think uh, most of you are young enough to not to understand and appreciate this thing. But when I was doing my undergrad, AI has came with a bang. AI, it was such like everybody was working. He was trying in any domain. They were trying to include AI or maybe ANN into their work. So there were people talking about, for example, geotechnological domain, including of AI and ANN into geotechnology. People are talking about manufacturing, again, inclusion of AI and ANN. Any domain you talk about, people were talking about inclusion. But then within few years, it died. Nobody was talking about AI and particularly research papers, which earlier were counted very highly, which include AI and NN. They were looking at a skeptical angles that now the researchers are including AI and NN, so they doesn't have a merit into the paper actually. But then again with the technological advances, the number of layers increased. Earlier there were only 3 to 4 layers. So the researchers were not able to solve big problems. Now the number of layers increased. People are not talking about 20, 21, 22. I think Madam is a better person to tell what is the state of the art now. So again, AI and ML is back with a bang, actually, I would say that it's like one of the very hot property now. So this is a cyclic process. And what I wanted to convey is that with education, you are always upskilling yourself. And that is the reason, uh, if you talk about the requirement of manpower, workforce, then the need of skilled workpower will increase to a large extent. And that is only possible by education. An education which not only talks of STEM, mathematics, computer science, data science, but also talks of STEAM, that you should also include art. So integration of mathematics, computer science, data science with sciences, social sciences, humanities, liberal arts is the need of the hour. And that will lead to the what I was telling you, the upskilling of the workforce from a low skill to high skill level. And even if you look at the current problems, one of the most challenging problems which are coming are climate change. You know how many people are talking about climate change, which is causing like pollution and there is a depletion of natural resources. So now people are talking about sustainable development. So there's a need of energy for the future, need of water. People say the next world war will be fought because of water. You know, there was some time back an article which talks about, I'm forgetting the name of the city in South of Africa. It's a very developed country, but it has exhausted all its resources of water. Now you can think, you people, it's very hard to think of a life without a water. The same way food, same way sanitation. So if this is the current problem, we need skilled personnel in biology, chemistry, physics, agriculture, climate sciences, social sciences. And how is this going to be possible? That's only possible because of education. And that's the change of role from unskilled laborers to skilled professionals. And that comes with education only. Even look at the COVID and the way COVID is, the virus is mutating itself. Nobody knows when it's going to end. So people are talking of epidemic and pandemic. And how are we going to address it? It is only possible if we perform collaborative research in infectious disease management and development of vaccines. Again, it's a collaborative research. So it's not only that we require scientists or biologists or chemists, we also need to have an entire supply chain management, which will make sure that the vaccines in the right frame reaches the right people and they're injected in the right manner. Even if you develop very good vaccine in a laboratory, and if it takes time, you don't have a proper logistics, proper supply chain system, and if it takes significant time to reach the patient, it is quite possible that by the time the vaccine has lost its potency, that would be more harmful. So this what I wanted to emphasize is that the time has come. If you forget about science, the social sciences, the society has forced us to learn and train ourselves that we need to have a multidisciplinary education, we need to have a cross-disciplinary education, we need to have an interdisciplinary education. And I think most of us are from the science background. That has also taught us the great demand for humanities and liberal art. Like one example, which we were not talking earlier, but very prominent, like most of the engineers, particularly from the reputed institutes like IITs and NITs, they were either entering into management, MBA, like most of the IIMs. I think 80% of the admissions at the IIMs are engineers, and that too from the premier HEIs, higher education institutes. So basically, they lose, they no more touch base with the science or engineering. They are into humanities and liberal art management. The other very popular domain was civil services. Again, most of the people who are cracking civil services were engineers. So this we were talking about, this is not something new, but people have not understood the importance of maybe collaborating education between science, engineering on the one side and humanities and liberal art from the other side. But now society has taught us. Society, which unfortunately in the form of epidemic and pandemic, or maybe climate change, global shortage of water, food, sustainable development, it has taught us that it's high time that we go for collaborative research and education. So the education is basically it's the gap between the current state of learning outcome and what is required. So this is very important part which education must help us understand that what we are learning and what is being required. Like even if we match today, tomorrow there will be a gap. That's the process of nature. That as and when we reach the zenith goes higher and higher. So what our learning outcome and what is required, that there's always a gap. Even we touch what is required, what is required goes up, and there always a gap. So this need to be bridged through undertaking some major reforms, and these reforms will ultimately will help us improve the quality, equity, and integrity of the system. So if we are able to understand the gap between the demand or the requirement of the society and what we are learning, if we are able to overcome these demands with major reforms, then that will lead us into a system which is of a very high quality, which is equitable, and which has high integrity. And that is possible, I would say, only by education. I'm emphasizing on the word only. So there's only by education is possible. So as a preamble to NEP 2020, India has aimed to have an education system by 2040 which should be second to none, and which should provide an equitable access to the highest quality education for all learners, regardless of their social or economical status. So it should not happen that whether I belong to a remote tribal area or I want to belong to a rich urban family, like both of us should have equitable access to the highest possible or the education of the best quality. And that is the aim to be achieved by 2040, so that our education system is second to none, what it used to be in BCs also. And that led to the formulation of NEP 2020. So this was just a background of NEP 2020, which I think most of you know, but I wanted to put in a different perspective because I want to link it later again after I talk about this NEP 2020. So NEP 2020, I think most of you are aware. So I'll just touch important points and maybe I'll go slightly faster so that we can finish the important things also. So probably this is the first education policy of the country in 21st century. And the objective was to handle many growing development imperatives. And it has proposed under the leadership of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the revision and revamping of all aspects of education structure, including its regulation and governance. And the overall, I say, it was aligned with the aspirational goals of 21st century education. So the emphasis was on the development of creative potential of each individual. And it was based on the principle that education must not only develop cognitive capacities, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions. So this is a very important point actually. The NEP 2020 focuses not only the development of cognitive skills, cognitive means basically related to brain or mental, but also the social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions of individuals. So when I talk of cognitive capacities, it can be basic cognitive capacities, which we talk about, for example, what we call the fundamental cognitive capacities, which are like something literacy and numeracy. And it can be, for example, high skilled cognitive capacity also, what is also known as HOTS. So all those uh, people who have their siblings or who have their kids who have just gone through the 10th or 12th examination, HOTS is a very important topic. So cognitive capacity, as I said, they can be foundational, which deals with literacy and numeracy, and there can be higher order capacity, which talks about critical thinking and problem solving. So HOTS is a word which have been included by CBSE in the school curriculum, particularly assessment part also, which talks about high order thinking skills actually. So that forces the school student to think on higher order, which is similar to what we call as critical thinking and problem solving. So these are very important problems. These are very important approaches to problem solving. And interestingly, all across the globe, education system, particularly, I'm not talking about the school because school education system is somewhat different in different countries. But if you look at the HEI, higher education system, particularly engineering education, they don't focus that strongly on critical thinking and problem solving as on analytical solving. So it's independent of school. So whether you talk about Triple IIM Jabalpur or any private college in Jabalpur, or maybe for example you talk about IIT Delhi or IIT Kanpur, or if you talk about probably the best schools in the world, maybe Stanford, MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, the level of the differentiation will change. Say some of these schools give more focus on synthesis-based education, some schools give less. But I would, if I say a overall picture, most of the education system all across the globe is focused more on I'm sorry, analysis than synthesis. That means they don't teach They don't give that focus on critical thinking and problem solving as is being required. So if you look at the old education system, there was a lot of focus on Gyan, Pragya, and Satya. And this was the hallmark of Indian thought and philosophy. And probably that was the reason the students all across the world were vying for a seat in Takshila and Nalanda and was considered to be very prestigious. So this is like, the good thing is that we still have not lost this Gyan, Pragya, and Satya. Our thought process and philosophy is still the same. Only thing is that it doesn't come in the forefront because we ourselves don't realize the importance of these three terms. So that's what even NEP 2020 has focused very strongly. So as you look at the ancient India world-class institutions like Takshila, Nalanda, Vikramshila, Vallabhi, if you look at their curriculums, which are documented also, they are highest standards of multidisciplinary teaching and research. So number one, they were very strong in multidisciplinary aspects, and they were not only teaching institution, but a very important angle among them was research also. And probably that was the reason the Indian education system produced one of the greatest scholars and seminal contributors to the world knowledge in diversified fields. Unfortunately, we didn't document it properly. So what has happened is that we do not know ourselves the great scientists, great mathematicians, great medicinal practices, the great philosophers which our country has produced. We do remember and we talk very proudly of Einstein, maybe Newton, but we are not, many of us don't know about, for example, Shukracharya or maybe Shankaracharya or maybe Panini. It's not that they are not at the same league, yes, but probably one difference, which is even justified also, that these people were in very past, but when we talk of people like Edison, Newton, Einstein, they were in very near future. So what I wanted to point out was what? That the highest standard of education, which were probably born in India, they lost track because of attack on the education system. But what has happened. So we should not keep on basking in the glory of our higher education system, but not only we should be able to preserve these rich legacies and we must nurture them, but we must preserve them for posterity. We must look into the future and we must carry out research and we must enhance our education system and we must put to new and upcoming uses of this knowledge through our education system. So if we have lost the bridge between the past and the present, not only we have to bridge that gap, we have to build a bridge, but we have to also extrapolate that bridge into the future. That's very important. So if you look at the objectives of NEP 2020, I think most of you know or you would be covered in your yesterday's lecture, maybe in future lecture, but I just wanted to present a snapshot. So one very important thing is it's a learner-centric teaching. The teaching should depend upon what you are willing to learn, not what I am willing to teach you. It must be based upon discussion-based teaching. So what I said at the beginning, we wanted an interactive class, not a one-way monologue type of thing. Then it must be able to deliver value-based education. The system must be able to develop multidisciplinary thinkers. Look at the importance of multidisciplinarism. We must be developing reality. It must be discovery-oriented teaching. We must develop critical thinkers. And we must have the capability to take or make decisions. That's very important. So we have many good aspects in our education system even now, but there are some aspects which we miss, and probably that is the reason In spite of one of the brightest brains in the world, our education system is not that well recognized. And the lacuna, the shortcoming lies in this slide itself. Like for example, we do not focus on what learner wanted to know. We have a very fixed curriculum. So I'll teach you only A, B, C, D. I'll not teach you after E, D. And I'll not teach at all B, C, D, A. So or some random order, D, C, B, A, or maybe C, A, B, C. I'll not teach you those things. While the emphasis of learner-centric teaching is that the learner is at the center. So you have to tailor your program what a student is willing to learn. This is not easy. Every student has different capability and different capacity. So we have to tailor the program probably as per individual. Then we must keep discussion. One very bad thing about Indian education system, which we used to talk about, is that we don't encourage inquisitiveness among the students. So any student, if, if she or he asks question, he or she is shut down. We don't focus on value-based education. Most of the HEIs are focused on a single discipline. We never talk of multidisciplinary, while we know that society lives on like this is not the correct state. It's not possible to compartmentalize the education. We can't live in silos. You take any product, for example. For example, you take a mobile phone. The mobile phone, as if we talk about a mobile phone, so the one thing which will come to the mind of anybody will be like say electronic product. But is it a purely electronic product? Does it not require other domains? The answer is a big no. So you take any product or any process. In real life, it is multidisciplinary. But what we teach, we have a very fixed structure. We say, if you are a student of electronics engineering, you have to study these 20 courses. You can't study a course on, forget about maybe humanities or economics or maybe philosophy. You can't even study a course on, for example, mechanical engineering or maybe civil engineering or maybe programming. Then we do not give that focus on what is reality, what we are supposed to discover. And in the process, we are not critical thinkers and we lack the ability of decision making, apart from the fact that we are also poor in documentation also. So what are the principles of NEP if we look into the broad preamble which I have just now introduced? So the principle of NEP 2020 are recognizing, identifying and fostering the unique capabilities of each student. And that is possible by starting with developing a foundation literacy and numeracy. Then the education system must offer flexibility with no hard separations, no silos, no compartments. Gone are the days when we can compartmentalize the education. We cannot keep the education in silos actually. So that means we must focus on multidisciplinarity and a holistic education. If you go through the our curriculum of design program, the starting preamble is that we want to provide a holistic design education. So it must emphasize on conceptual understanding, creativity and critical thinking, ethics and human, along with the constitutional values. We must promote multilingualism and the power of language. Because if you don't have a power, this leads to basically a very important part of communication and documentation. So whatever we are researching, whatever we are proposing, that should be understood properly by the end user. And it's quite possible that end user does not understand your language. End user is a native person who understands maybe only Tamil, and I don't know Tamil. I am developing something in English. So how would the communication challenge will be overcome? How will we be able to communicate the outcomes of my product, the advantage of my product to the end user? So that is only possible by promoting multilingualism and understanding the power of language, and that also put emphasis on life skills. Then the other principles of NEP 2020 is they must focus on regular formative assessment for learning, extensive use of technology. We must respect for diversity as well as local context, full equity and inclusion, and there must be synergy in curriculum across all levels of education. So teachers and faculty are the heart of the learning process. So keeping this into mind, NEP 2020 has proposed a regulatory framework which is light, not too many rules, but whatever rules are there, they are very tight, so that we can ensure integrity, transparency, and efficiency of the resources. NEP 2020 is also focused on outstanding research, and that's why they have proposed to setting up a national research foundation, as well as MERUs, multi-utility education research units. Okay, so these are basically research units which are not only multidisciplinary but primarily research focused. Then there must be continuous review of progress as we talk about our students. We say the grading system which most of the engineering institutes have introduced into their curriculum, most of the HEIs have, it focuses on continuous evaluation. We no longer depend upon one final examination at the end of the year, and if the student passes that examination, she is declared pass, otherwise fail. We say we have scenarios where maybe unfortunately a student misses, couldn't give because of health reasons or any other reason, his or her final examination. But since he or she has appeared in all the semester long examinations, he or she will still get a good or decent grade. And a very important emphasis of NEP 2020 is to make Indians realize the importance of being Indian. So we must develop a responsible and honored citizen of the country. The students must have their strong roots into the country, and they must feel pride in India. It should not happen that that doesn't mean that you should not go out. You are free to go and study at any part of the country, but then don't say that whatever you have learned or whatever you have accessed outside India is very good and whatever India is providing is bad. Look at any developed country, whether you talk of Japan, whether you talk of Korea, whether you talk of probably Scandinavian countries, they feel very pride in their country. This somehow is missing among the Indian youth. So one of the objectives of NEP 2020 is to make the students responsible and dedicated citizens of the country. That means they have to be made Indians first before they become doctors, engineers, scientists, researchers, professors, CEOs, whatever they want to have. They should be Indian first. So education is a public service, and it requires a substantial investment in a strong and vibrant public education system. The vision of NEP 2020 are it must contribute directly to transforming country sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society. It must be making India a global knowledge superpower, and as a students, we must develop respect towards the fundamental duty and constitutional values, and we must have our strong commitment to human rights, sustainable development, living, and global well-being. These are all like factors which I would say make the purpose of NEP 2020 is to make students responsible citizens of the country. If you look at the divisions of NEP 2020, it's broadly 4 areas. It talks about school education, it talks about higher education, it talks about other key areas and making it happen. So our focus is on higher education. So, and as I said that the objective of my task, my lecture today is on institutional restructuring and consolidation. So I'll straight away jump to that. So if you look at this figure as a part of NEP 2020 on higher education, Section 10.1 and 10 to 10.14 talks about institutional restructure and consolidation. There are other things also which you can read over here also, like holistic education, optimal learning environment, motivation, energization of capable faculty, teacher education, vocational education, professional education, promoting high quality research, effective leadership and governance, regulatory system, languages, arts and culture, and use of technology and integration. So I'll start focusing on this, and then I'll talk about this and its impact on this particular domain. Coming to institutional restructuring and consolidation. So the main thrust of the NEP 2020 in the domain of higher education was to convert the current institution HEIs, whether you talk of private colleges, whether you talk of universities, private universities or government universities, whether you talk of, for example, CFTIs like NITs, IITs, triple IITs, NIDs, into large multidisciplinary universities, colleges, and HEI clusters of knowledge hub. So that's one focus, that rather than small colleges, let's consolidate them and restructure them. So we wanted to have each institution having not less than 3,000 students. Now, if you look at the current trend of international education, look at any good university. You talk of Oxford, probably they have 10,000 students, even more. Look at talk of Stanford, they have only 8,000, 10,000 graduate students. And if you include undergraduate, they have 20,000 plus students. Same is true with probably Harvard, same is true with probably with MIT, and all of them are multidisciplinary. So if you talk of, for example, Stanford, their engineering is one of the best, being based in Silicon Valley. So equally good is their management, equally good is their medicine. The Stanford Hospital is one of the best in the entire world. Same is true if you look at Harvard, for example. Harvard MBA is Harvard MBA and Stanford MBA are competing among themselves as number one and number two. Harvard Law, again, probably number one. Look at the physics, chemistry. Probably they have the largest number of Nobel laureates as a faculty members. So this show, and same is true with economics also. This shows their multidisciplinary, large clusters, and integrated, and large number of students. That give them a lot of leverage. What type of leverage? I'll show in subsequent slides. So advantages of this restructuring consolidation will be there will be vibrant communities of scholars and peers, which are multidisciplinary, and the process they are ready to break the harmful silos. The students will not learn one subject, but they will have a well-rounded personalities across the disciplines, and they will be responsible for developing active research communities which are primarily cross-disciplinary. So people are researching not only in, for example, engineering, but they're also researching in philosophy. They're also researching in medicine. So a engineering student is researching in, for example, statistics also, researching in chemistry also, and researching in, for example, medicine also. Okay, so that's what we call a cross-disciplinary research. So this is one of the highest recommendation of the NEP in the domain of NEP 2020, that is institutional restructuring and consolidation. And they have taken the lead from our ancient universities, Takshila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, and Vikramshila, which have demonstrated the importance of the large universities, multidisciplinary universities, focusing on both teaching and research. So before we move forward, we must understand what is the meaning of HEI, or what does a HEI constitute, higher education institution? What do we mean by a university or a college? So by university now we mean a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning that offers undergraduate and graduate programs. And the process, it offers high quality teaching, research, and community engagement. So community engagement is also very important. If you look at the US model of education, their community colleges are very famous and very important part of the development of the society as a whole. So the definition of the university will include a spectrum of institutions, which can be number one, research intensive, which give equal emphasis on teaching and research, or teaching intensive, where the larger focus is on teaching, but they still conduct some research, or maybe autonomous degree granting colleges, which are mainly focused on undergraduate education, and they are more into teaching than research. But as I've been talking again and again, these classification or these silos are not static. These are dynamic. So it is quite possible, and we should always aspire that if we are a autonomous degree granting colleges, we should move to teaching intensive university. If we are teaching intensive university, we should move to research intensive education. And importance is that you cannot teach good unless until you research also, because technology is changing very fast. And when I am saying technology, I'm not talking about engineering technology. Whether you talk of medicine technology, whether you talk of legal technology, whether you talk of management technology, everything is changing very fast. And new education, what you're supposed to teach, only can be obtained by researching. So somebody who is a good researcher, he may not be a very good teacher, but the probability is higher. On the other hand, somebody who is a very good teacher, but not a researcher at all, then he is only a good disseminator of a knowledge. He cannot be a good teacher as per the exact definition of a teacher. So teacher is something I'll show you some of the slides later also. He should not be always knowledge disseminator. He should be knowledge generator also. And that comes from the research. So there should be a mechanism for moving up from granting greater autonomy to colleges, and the colleges should be encouraged, mentored, supported to attain minimum benchmarks, and the process they should be getting accreditations, and each college should emphasize to develop into either a degree granting college or a constituent college of a university. So autonomous degree granting colleges will evolve into research intensive or teaching intensive universities. And that means these institutions, this classification I've shown you just now, this is not as rigid, but it should be basically based on a continuum mechanism. They should be evolving and moving up and up. So all the HEIs must have autonomy and freedom to move gradually from one category to another, based upon their plans, actions, and effectiveness. So expectations of high quality education and of teaching, learning across all HEIs will be same. And they will have additional crucial responsibilities, which they will discharge through appropriate resources, incentives, and structures. And like they should support other HEIs in development, there should be community engagement, they should contribute to different fields of practice, there should be faculty development, and even support to school education. So that means all HEIs should aim to become multidisciplinary education. And they should also aim for larger student enrollments in thousands, so that we have optimal utilization of infrastructure, resources, and creation of vibrant multidisciplinary communities. NEP 2020 has targeted that, first of all HEIs should plan to become multidisciplinary by 2030, and then gradually increase student strength to desired level by 2040. This is a two-stage process. So all HEIs, all higher education institutes must first become multidisciplinary and then increase their intake when they are stabilized by multidisciplinary level. So this target has to be achieved respectively in 2030 and 2040. And more HEIs will be established in undeserved regions, in underprivileged areas, so that everybody will have full access, equity, and inclusion. So every district will have at least one large multidisciplinary HEI by 2030. And it will not be only done by private public support, but it can be also supported by private, and they should have all mediums of instructions in local Indian language or bilingual. Then other target of NEP 2020 was to increase the gross enrollment ratio from 26.3 in 2018 to 50% by 2035, and a number of new institutions may be developed to attain these goals, which will be responsible for enhancement and creation of capacity. And this consolidation will be done by the consolidation of the capacity, and in the process, they will help improve the existing HEIs. So, for example, if there are two different HEIs in the neighborhood, if they join hand, that means they will be joining with their strength. So that will help improve both the HEIs. That's an important factor. Then it will lead to growth in both public and private institutions, with strong emphasis on developing a large number of outstanding public institutions. There should be a fair and transparent system of funding and an equitable opportunity for all public institutions to grow and develop based upon a transparent and pre-announced criteria. There should be also a focus on distance learning, open distance learning, and online programs. And hello.
Yeah, Professor Tandon.
Yeah.
Perhaps audience may be having some questions.
I just wanted to finish this part, maybe another 2-3 slides, and I'll take a break. I have already in my mind.
Okay.
Just finish this. Maybe another 3-4 slides are left, and then I'll take a break. Okay. So all these, because this has also taught us because of this COVID-19, the importance of distance learning. So this is also a very important factor. So all top institutions must be accredited with open distance learning program, and they should be trained. They should be focused to develop high quality online courses which are going to be integrated into the curricula, and there would be all the single stream HEIs will be phased out over a period of time, so that every institution becomes a multidisciplinary, which will have departments across different fields. And ultimately, all HEIs will move towards autonomy, both academic and administrative, to have a vibrant culture. And when we talk about autonomy, that means they also have financial support and financial stability. And in the process, whether it's a public or private institution, they will be committed to high quality, equitable education across different segments of society in the country. So basically what it means is that all the institutions must set minimum benchmarks in academic and curriculum matters, teaching and assessment, governance reforms, financial robustness, and administrative assessments. Then we also know that when these institutions are able to achieve the benchmarks, they will become autonomous degree granting colleges, and these degree granting colleges will be integrated into a higher education system, which will also include professional and vocational education. And this policy and its approach will be equally applicable to all HEIs across all current streams. So when we talk of universities, we talk of a institution which grants undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral degree programs, including both teaching and research. And the terms which we are using now as deemed to be university, affiliating technical university, or unilateral university, they will be simply replaced by a word university on fulfilling the criteria. And that means all the affiliated colleges will be phased out in a 15 years time frame into graded autonomy, and all these colleges will have to attain certain benchmark to secure the prescribed accreditation and eventually become autonomous degree granting colleges. Okay, so I'll just stop here for a few minutes. I'm open to take some of the questions still on the NEP part. Now I'll change gears after this. I have given you a background of NEP 2020. Keeping that background into mind, I'll now talk about the role of teacher actually, and more importantly, the role of technology in education, particularly not only from the academic point of view, but also institutional restructuring and consolidation point of view. But before that, let's have some discussion. If anybody has any question, I'll be happy to answer before I move forward.
Thank you, Professor Tandon, for such an excellent introduction. And I'm sure that people must be having a lot of questions in their mind and points of discussion. May I request members to please raise your hand so that I can unmute you if you have any questions.
Well, as a teacher, my feeling is that if there is no question, there are only two possibilities, that you have understood everything or you understood nothing. The possibility of first is rare. So my guess is, I'm sorry, but that I'm not able to maybe deliver it properly.
No, this was such a lucid introduction to NEP and starting from the roots of ancient India, that I'm sure that the first possibility cannot be ruled out. And so the first possibility is there. But when we talk about institutions in India, and we look at the ranking of institution, one question always come to my mind. Think of Harvard, Stanford, or any other such institution, which is a very top institution. And think of, say, Delhi University or Osmania University or any other university with a very large number of students, 1.5 lakhs, 1.6 lakhs. Do you think that there is a kind of biasness in the ranking parameters? If we see, we compare ourselves with who have only, I mean, the universities having only 20,000 students, with universities reaching out to more than 1 lakh and 2 lakh students. So what parameters should be considered for the ranking of these universities, which are following some very different kind of mandate of massive education, reaching the unreached? So I would like to listen from you. It was such a wonderful lecture. Can you please throw light on this?
Actually, my perception is somewhat different. I'll say that whenever we are going to play any game, we have to define the rules of the game beforehand. And in this case also, when we talk of ranking, actually, we know the parameters on which whether Times is ranking or Quiz is ranking well in advance. So it's not something that now we can cry that we are not as per, we are not able to achieve good ranking because our parameters are somewhat different than that. Although I agree with you that mandate is very much different, and that mandate differs primarily because of the large number of population the country has and the large number of students we have to train. But if you look at, if you honestly look ourselves, because it is always easy to point fingers on the others rather than looking ourselves. If you look at, for example, any good university, maybe if you talk about, for example, Punjab University, Chandigarh, or Delhi University, or maybe University of Hyderabad, they do have large number of students. But if you look at this large number of students, they are mainly into affiliating colleges. And when you talk of affiliating colleges, they do not have the freedom of designing their own curriculum. That's a very rigid and static curriculum, which is, I would say, and I'm sorry for that, but that's forced down the throats of the students, whether the college have the trained faculty or not, irrespective of that fact. And it takes years and years for a curriculum to be changed with another model. And when at a time it's changed and new model comes into effectiveness, it has already become obsolete. So we are not flexible, we are not lit. That we should understand. And that's why in last few slides I have been talking about the focus of NEP on upgrading these affiliating colleges to autonomous colleges. That's very important. So it is quite possible that, for example, we have a Ramjas College in Delhi, whose faculty strength lies in different domains. We have Hansas College in Delhi, which probably has equal number of students, but the strength lies in different. And if you look at this model, if you look at this particular model, all those colleges which are given maybe limited autonomy, but which are working on their strength, they have very high reputation. You talk of Lady Shriram, you talk of Miranda House, you talk of Shriram College of Commerce, or you talk of, for example, Presidency College in Kolkata. They are working as per their strength, unlike majority of the colleges. So if you look, for example, in Jabalpur, the university has maybe hundreds of colleges, and people are not bothered what students are learning over there. On the other hand, if you look at the other model, for example, if you look at IITs, which are, and second thing which these colleges do, they, like, for them, the research is a forbidden word. So this is what I'm going to talk in my next slide also, that knowledge dissemination is one thing, but knowledge generation is also equally important. On the other hand, if you look at IITs, for example, they focus a lot on research, but then they don't have multidisciplinarism, they don't have large numbers, and obviously they are, which is one of the important parameters, they don't have foreign students and foreign faculty members. So they are not open. They are still very, very restricted. And unfortunately, I would say, because of these large number of IITs which have opened up, these have also become more localized actually. So a faculty member who may be probably working at IIT Delhi, and if she belongs to, for example, Andhra Pradesh and IIT Hyderabad has come up, he will move to IIT Hyderabad. So this is also dangerous for the country actually. And forget about faculty, for students, this is like very, 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 it has increased a lot actually. I have seen the culture of NITs. It has gone down tremendously just because of this fact that maybe within 50, 60 or 100 kilometers radius, every student is an NIT. So they'll not like to go to the best NIT where they get admission. They will go to the closest NIT so that on Saturday, Sunday, they can come to home. For what? To get their laundry washed, rather than getting the best possible education. I think I crossed that part of it.
Thank you so very much. And you can take a small break because you're coughing. I know that you have not, you were unwell.
On last week actually, no issues.
Thank you.
Any other question anybody has? Okay, if no question, let's start. Let me take to the next part. Okay, so next thing, as I said, we'll be talking about teaching, which is basically includes both knowledge resource generation as well as dissemination. So teaching, I would say, this is my feeling, is more analogous to innovation. When I say innovation, if you look at the correct meaning of the word innovation, it is not only creating something new, but also creating something which people are ready to take and accept, that means which has a market value. So if I designed maybe, I think everybody has read Harry Potter series of novels. So if I design a Horcrux, and if you feel that this is this is something not possible and nobody is ready to purchase it, in spite of the fact that this is a highly innovative product, I'll say this is maybe 5 years or 10 years ahead of time, because people are not ready to do it. Same is true with teaching also. So it is not only creation and passage of knowledge which creates wealth, but it also means people should be ready to accept it, and that is accepted in the form. That means if you are enhancing the knowledge of your students, at least the recruiter should be ready to pay for it. This percolates from placement, good placement. When I say placement, it doesn't mean campus placement, which most of us understand by the word placement. And that's why I'm not used the word placement in my slide. I said recruiters. So you may have knowledge. With this knowledge, you can crack possibly the best possible examination in the world, and maybe you go for a PhD program to Oxford or Cambridge, or maybe you crack civil services, or maybe you crack maybe IIMS CAT examination, or maybe you get the best possible job in maybe Google, Facebook, Netflix, whatever you. So that's what is teaching. So teaching is not only creation and passage of knowledge that creates value, but it is also the knowledge which the other segment of the society is ready to appreciate and even ready to pay for it. And that's what the origin definition of innovation is also like. The focus of teaching is to ensure that the outcomes of the teaching must meet the human desires, the human needs, and human capabilities. So it must, whatever human wants, whatever human needs, but more importantly, it also should depend upon the capabilities. So if I don't like mathematics and I don't feel happy in mathematics, I'm good in music, I should be taught finance. I should not be forced to learn mathematics. That's the importance of teaching. So, starting from school level, one should be able to understand what are the inclination of a student are. And if you don't allow, what is going to happen? Ultimately, we are wasting resources. So we have, for example, a person like one of my favorites, IIT Bombay alumni, Nitesh, who is basically a reputed director, movie director, who has directed movies like Dangal. He's no more using engineering actually. I would not say it's a waste, but probably since he was not inclined to do engineering, probably somebody else would have got his seat and he would have been trained for his passion, which is like fine arts or which is like, for example, movie making. So probably the time which he spent at IIT Bombay and then subsequent struggle which he would have done for himself to establish himself basically would have been achieved by putting the minimum possible time. So basically, teaching is more like teaching the student, training the students in problem solving. It's not, forget about everything. We say teaching is like teaching in first year mathematics, physics, chemistry, engineering, graphics, basic electronic. Second year, maybe introduction to profession, your courses. So if you're a computer science student, maybe programming languages, then maybe computer vision, maybe artificial intelligence, maybe deep learning and other courses. But that's not exactly teaching. What I say is that the basic purpose of teaching is to train the students, train the young minds, this lightening of the bulb, which is normally denoting the obtaining, the getting knowledge. So it's basically teaching you the problem solving. And problem solving means you have to first understand the problem. This is one domain which not only the students, but even faculty also lack. And that's why we are not able to teach. We don't know how to understand, how to frame the problem. If you're not able to, then we'll not be able to resolve it. So, but if you understand the problem, if you resolve it properly, the net outcome will be knowledge. So knowledge generation is possible in this way also by researching. So problem solving is researching. And if you look, this is one of my favorite graphics actually, and I try to include in like most of my presentation. So if you look at this particular slide, this is interesting in the sense that I've seen this particular way. Problems come in all shapes and all sizes. They come from different direction. They are coming to you from left. They're coming to you from the right. They're leaving you from the right. They're leaving you towards the left. And they look all the technological aspects also. So problem is not unilaterally. Problem is not in one compartment. It's not like a strict single discipline compartment. Problem is multidisciplinary. So you cannot be a good researcher, you cannot be a good problem solver unless until you have skills in all these sets. And once you become a good problem solver, you become a good researcher, then you will be able to generate solutions, generate knowledge. So we look to if you move from school to college, and that's a very interesting example which I want to show you. In the school, everything is spoon fed. So your students which are taught in the classroom, knowledge, computers, There's a grading, there's a teaching, there's example, there are courses, they are learning. On the other hand, if you look at the college or universities, you are left to learn on your own. It's more like a thinking process. You're thinking, and the thinking, you are learning how to learn. If you look at schools, for example, if students do not understand what is being taught to you, the blame lies on the teacher. The principal will say that your students have trouble understanding you. But if you look at college or university, you know who is the best teacher? Can anybody make a guess? Who is the best teacher? Just quick guess. The best teacher of a university or a college are Google or Wikipedia. Okay, most of the students want to learn from these domains, and they say whatever is given in Google or Wikipedia, that's right. That means that as a faculty members, as a teacher, we have to change our roles. We have to change gears, and that's where the role of a teacher becomes very important. So today is the time when the role of teachers become very complex, very extensive, and highly interrelated, which was not there a few years back because of boom in technology, boom in digital media. So if everything is available online, what is your role? Why, as a teacher, I am required. If I cannot give anything new to my students, probably my employer will fire me. So why should my employer hire me if everything is available on Google and that is too on free? So if student is learning the same, what I can teach, they don't require me. So we have to, as a teacher, we have to preserve our jobs also. Very important. So the role of a teacher is to not only to provide the power education, but also we have to understand the lives of students in and in the process we must create students a positive influence by developing an ability to learn among themselves. So that means the role of teacher is much more beyond simple classroom teaching. And that's why the difference in the word teaching and education. So we are not teaching students anymore. We are educating them. We are trying to make them responsible citizens. So teaching has different phases. And as a teacher, our role is more like an external parent, a counselor, a mentor, a role model, and uh, the our role has in last few years, maybe last few decades, a couple of decades has changed a lot. It's a significant change into the way. So earlier we were given a specific curriculum to follow, and we know that like these are 40 lecture hours course. So the first lecture will teach this, second lecture will teach this, third lecture will teach this, and rarely we go beyond that. But now, as we start teaching, our students start asking questions which are even beyond. Forget about first lecture, maybe it may be beyond 40th lecture also. So we have to quickly change gears, and we have to satisfy and satiate the curiosity of the students, and we have to also counsel the students, mentor students, and teach them how to use and apply knowledge in their lives. So teachers nowadays are looking for ways they can impact students on a whole different level and inspire them to be more and do more. So that means the role of a teacher has changed from disseminating knowledge to facilitators also. So we are no more just simply knowledge disseminators. We are more like facilitators. We have to facilitate so that student can pick up the right knowledge from the right place in the right frame of time at the right time. So as a facilitators, we should always try to synthesize new combinations. So the first role of a teacher is sharing knowledge, and that means to impart knowledge that comes from the teaching, and we have to follow a curriculum. It's not that we cannot define a curriculum, but interpretation of curriculum, teaching beyond curriculum is something which is over there. But our basic responsibility, the responsibility start is to impart knowledge as per the curriculum, and that means to bring all the students to a level where every student understand what is being taught to them. Uh, Another interesting thing is the role modeling. Although most of the teachers, I'd say, they don't consider themselves to be role models. The truth is, they always. If you look like, for example, if I ask you one impromptu question, or maybe I ask you to answer in an impromptu manner, that name one person who has influenced you the most. Probably most of us will give answer by naming a teacher in our school days. If I give you some more time, probably you will give answer to somebody who taught in the college or university. It will be very rare that people will talk about being influenced by somebody, by actor, or somebody by maybe by a sports person also. It's possible to have sports person also somebody will influence you. But uh, most of the time, we try to follow what our teachers has done. Like I today at my age also, I always aspire to be maybe even 10% of my supervisor. So this is like something which is a something like which I say is a role model. And the reason is that the amount of time a student spends with teacher, whether in school or whether in college, that is probably more than a student or maybe a kid spends with his or her parents these days. Because maybe forcefully or maybe by choice, I think from 9 to 5, every student is spending time in the college or university with teachers and peers. And when they go back, if they live in the hostels, probably only in the weekends they can, or only in the holidays they can go to their home. But even if they are day scholars, somebody studying in a affiliated college, then even if they go to home, there are many other things to do. They have friends to play with, they have TV or maybe OTTs to watch programs at. So they spend and then most importantly, the most important thing they have is mobile phones. To look at the WhatsApp messages, look at the YouTube and blah blah. So they don't even spend 1 hour with their parents. Look at the 1 hour to 8 hours with teachers. So it is like it has both type of influences, positive influence, negative influence. But considering that positive influence, this is because of this fact the teachers act as role models. So because of this, this factor, the teachers, the role of teacher goes beyond just beyond teaching or curriculum development, but also in grooming a child, with also in character building also. Okay, so both positive and negative, but mainly it's a like the grooming of a student, the character building of a student is also being done by teacher. The third important role is to act as an external parent, because both the teachers and the students spend a lot of time together. So teacher can mentor a student in a proper manner to the right path, and in this way they can not only inspire the student to do the right thing, but also advise and tell him to understand how to pick up or how to differentiate between the right and the wrong. So this also encourages students to deliver their best, and by this manner, teacher can become a source of inspiration and a source of advice to the students. And teachers also are responsible for shaping the society, because they are not only learning and trying to solve the student problems, but they're also trying to mentor them to the best of their abilities. And most of the time, most of the teachers handle things in a very patient manner, and the process can shape the academic goals of the youth. They Most of the teachers do not do this for their recognition, but they're doing because they follow their heart. Like if you look, most of the faculty members all across the world, not only in India, they have come to this profession by choice, and that's why it is like they are able to deliver valuable skills because they are following their heart, and they know the cause, and they know how to contribute towards shaping the society for the better society of the future. They also change lives for better. It is not always that good students come across teachers' path. There are many disinterested students also. So it is also the role of the teacher to encourage or enlighten the light of knowledge into their hearts. A brilliant teacher is always compassionate to both good students as well as students who are just for the sake of education or just for the sake of degree have taken enrollment, but do not really want to study anything. So this is also helpful for changing lives for the better, and that means to encourage students to be full of spirit during their lows, and the teachers are also responsible for changing the lives of the students for the better. So if you look at the 21st century teacher, the role or the characteristics of a teacher are he should be adapter, he should be a communicator, he should be a learner, visionary, leader, model, collaborator, risk taker. So a teacher has to be maybe an all-to-all package, a complete package on his or her own. You cannot leave anything in between if you want to be a teacher of the next generation. And unfortunately, it's not, you don't have a choice because we are into 21st century, we are into 22nd century now. And the way technology is changing, we have to have all these characteristics to become good teachers, good researchers, to generate and disseminate knowledge. So teachers should be compassionate, passionate about learning. He must have in-depth understanding. He must be patient, good follower of own words, a great communicator. He should be great at putting efforts. And again, if you look at teachers' roles, so it's starting from the student contact to medical expertise to student distance to teaching expertise. The roles include of that of facilitator, role model, information provider, resource developer, planner, assessor. And everything has maybe twin. So the facilitator should be mentor and learning facilitator, role model, on the job role model, teaching role model, information provider, lecturer who is delivering information, and practitioner, somebody who conducts lab or clinic, medical expertise, for example. Resource developer, material creator, and study guide producer, planner, course organizer, and curriculum planner, assessor, curriculum evaluator, as well as individual student assessor. So these are, you see, there are multiple roles. And it cannot happen that we can have 10 faculties and every faculty will have different roles. So each of those 10 faculty must have these 12 roles, 6 into 2. So they must have all these roles. So if you look at the student learning capacities, they are also different. So some students prefer learning by bodily, that means physically by doing experimentation. What do we say, kinesthetic? Somebody learns to art, musical, somebody learns to linguistic. Some people have more logical brain, their right side of the brain is much more stronger. Some students learn in interpersonal manner, some learn intrapersonal manner, some learn in naturalistic manner. We give them example of nature, and some are good at capturing knowledge for visual spatial manner. So students' learning styles are also different. That means as a teacher, our role has to be different. I cannot focus on that. I would be making good PowerPoint presentation and every student will learn. It's not possible. Some student will not pick up. So you have to teach them through experimentation, or you have to take them to the nature and connect nature with them to make them understand. So teacher, if I put like this, and it's like transfer of knowledge, teaching means enlightenment, aligning with portion and real life, character building, healing touch offer, involvement with the student in studies, nurturing the thoughts into reality, giving a final shape. So why I'm talking all these things at this point of time is because the changes which have occurred in the last few years, although teachers remains the same, because in advances in technology, the education has changed a lot in recent times. So it has become more interactive because of the inclusion of digital media. Newer technology like AI, augmented reality has opened a new dimension. But more importantly, there has to be a role of a teacher which has to be played. in spite of the fact that everything is available on the internet, there need to be somebody who can connect the students to them in a proper manner, who should be able to differentiate the knowledge which is available in different internet platforms. What is right, what is wrong. Like most of these students, I tell them very frequently that they pick up from Google or pick up from Wikipedia, and they only take maybe part of the sentence. They have a keyword, they take one word from the left, one word from the right. Although if they read the entire sentence, probably the entire meaning will change, which they don't understand. So that's where our role becomes prominent, and that too as a facilitator. So we are no more seen as only keepers of information, and we have to share this information. And not only because the information is available, so students have already shared them and maybe digested them also. That means that our role has maybe significantly changed. We are not talking, I'll show you one of the slides later also. We are not talking of flip education. So there's a gap between the information and knowledge, which is a real education. So teachers can gear up to help students to understand knowledge and concepts outside the text box. And teachers interact with the student with viable real life examples, incidents, so that students have better understanding and awareness of the subject. So with real life examples, they can apply their lessons to many subjects. And in this way, teacher will become a consistent guide, helping the student graduate from one lesson to another. So another thing, very important thing is career counseling. So guiding a student what should be the right career for the right student is very important, because I have discussed earlier also, not every student have right likes or dislike. So there is somebody who probably cracked the JEE with the highest possible rank, entered into the best possible institute in the country, and then lost track because he finds that his passion is more towards music. That means, although he is good, so probably he has learned physics, chemistry, mathematics also very good, but that was not his natural passion. So we have to understand, and that comes from the career counseling. What is good for a student or what is bad? So there must be enhanced civilization while giving people the right tools to make informed decisions. And that will help the students to have the power of problem solving skills. So teacher also act as a leader. So teacher must make students creative, independent, informed, incisive, innovative, who are ready to contribute to the society and create a better place for the next generation. That means, and this is a very huge responsibility. That means you have to train the student not as a student, but as a futuristic leaders also. So leadership is the most important trait for modern day human beings, because leaders can make connections and make everyone a part of their mission. And probably because of this importance of the role of leadership, I think you people may not have connected, but more and more startups are coming up. Like for example, the co-founders of startups, maybe CTOs or CEOs, they're all leaders. I'm not talking about political leaders. Political leaders are also there. So I'm not confining to political, but leaders in for any organization. Maybe I'm leading a group of 7 people into a musical band. That's also leadership. The reason is that why they make connection, because they have to take initiative. And in this connected work, where networking is very important, so nothing happens unless until we step up and begin, unless until we start driving without a clear map. So whenever there is a confusion and chaos, the leaders are responsible for carrying the people to the right goals. And that's where the role of teachers become very important. And because of this change in social media, change in rise in technology, the role of technology in education has become very important. So 21st century is considered to be as a century of as the era of technology. And because of this technology, it is not only impacting, for example, science, mathematics, medicine, but it is also impacting the domain what we are talking about, that is education. So technology, if I define, it's like a knowledge of techniques, processes, and life, which also includes systems which apply technology by taking into input and delivering something as an output. Technology is like uh, generating tools or creating skills. And when we talk of education technology, it is the effective use of technological tools in learning as a concept it concerns, and the process it leads to an array of tools such as media, machines, networking hardware, and connecting theoretical knowledge with practical applications. So there is a like wide availability of new and emerging technological tools which teachers can use in making their teaching effective and more fun loving. So starting from school, teachers use nowadays computers, laptops, digital cameras, hardware tools like CD-ROMs, LCDs, printers, scanners, software, including internet. So with these tools, there are many approaches. It can be cooperative learning, it can be shared intelligence, it can be problem solving, it can be higher level skills. So all these, and nobody was talking about these learning techniques maybe a decade or maybe a decade and a half back, because we have not started using technology in education. So education is basically is just a form of learning, and that means knowledge is transformed from one generation to the next through teaching, training, and research. So technology has made the learning easy, interesting, and interactive. You see, this is technology. So this has made the entire thing network connected. And in this way, anybody can learn things quickly. He can learn in an interesting manner and an interactive manner. The one of the important technological tools is a digital technology. And digital technology, apart from in wireless communication or maybe digital media or maybe direct to home or OTT platforms, it has also impacted a lot the education. It has ingressed into the domain of education. So the way students learn, the way teachers teach, the the technology has probably changed the face of education, and in the process not only making it accessible all across the world, maybe people of different social bringings, different economical status, but it also made the education more effective. So I can, like for example, this lecture I'm delivering sitting at my office in Jabalpur, and people all across the country are listening to it. If this is being recorded, or maybe the streamlined, people in maybe Afghanistan can also listen to it. People in Syria can also listen to it. People in Lebanon can also listen to it, as well as people in Japan and America can also listen to it. So accessible to all and very affordable. They are not paying anything for it. So you see many good instructors these days, they are posting their lectures on YouTube, which are freely accessible to anybody. So the question is, why should we use technology in education? The reason is basically this technology as a tool has democratized education, which I just now told you that any student in the deepest part of rural India will be getting the same education as a student in high class urban society. So technology has helped democratize the entire education system. It has also enhanced the engaging learning experience, increased student engagement, provided access to resources, and enhanced teaching methodology. With increase in automation and other factors, more children will need to leave school with the technology skills needed in future economy. So the requirement of technological skills are much more higher than what were maybe 5 years before. Like when I graduated, there was no formal big computer. I worked on a computer which was something like a three-story building. Now you cannot think of any school kid who do not know how to use a laptop or who do not know how to use a mobile phone or a tab. Like even now, if I have to learn something new, I'll ask my child to teach me. I'll ask my son to teach me. He becomes a teacher for me because he has learned those technological skills, and that's his mandate also. He has to learn. So with technology, we can also have personalized tracking of student progress. It can help you to access in real time student data, longitudinal information, contents, app, and technology can also help the educators to create a blended learning environment and leverage learning tools. Now, if you look at the technological development, now approximately to 2.7 billion people across the world have access to internet, and 6.8 billion people, they are frequent users of mobile phones. The online education, it has gained exponentially, and it is expected by this year 61% people will have internet access. So that is the reason technology is transforming education, changing how, when, where students learn and empower them. And that's also one of the mandate of NEP 2020. The technological education can be both non-projected and projected. So conventional chalk and talk of technology, or a new one which uses multimedia tools, both are included. And as a good teacher, I should have a proper blend of both non-projected aids as well as projected aids also. I don't think I need to discuss these things. You are aware of all these things, panel board, flip chart, models. So if you look at the evolution of technology in education, starting from 1650, where some wooden boards were given, to sticks, to maybe optical microscopes, to slates, to blackboards, to position systems, to musical system, to maybe other advanced devices, to maybe earplugs, to maybe the first state of computers, to digital projection, and now everything is being learned on tabs. And this slide, I'm still talking of 11 years before. You can understand what has happened in the last 11 years, last 1 decade, how much technology has changed. And if you look at, like, for example, you find like many big names: Byju's, Canvas Learning Management System, Goriac, Khan Academy, McGraw Hill Connect, ThinkUp, Nearpod, Lumino, Kaltura Video Cloud. All are like technological tools in education. And there's a lot of research and investment being done to develop these technological tools, which has also changed the mode of education. So modern education, which is mainly science and engineering education, has grown to a large extent and now includes, whether we like it or not, a lot of cross-disciplinary activities. So these activities include a plethora of ICT tools, information and communication technologies tool. So like we talk about Industry 4.0, which is talking about connected system. We also talk about Education 4.0, where we have connected minds through multiple physical and cyber resources through ICT tools. So we have like different types of ICT tools, and the way ICT lifestyle is changing our lifestyle, that has changed a lot. So the graduating students are called upon to work within new environmental, new economic, and new social constraints, which are increasingly becoming a part of contemporary engineering practice. So in the light of advancement in ICT, that the traditional teaching pedagogy, which we used to follow, has started becoming a barrier to proper learning, behavior, and performance. So we need to overcome this barrier. And for that, we require the advent of technology in education. That's where the mode of education will change. And that's what we have to understand while we are implementing NEP 2020. So there is one thing as a document, what we call as NEP 2020. But whether NEP 2020 is good or bad, it also depends upon us. How are we going to implement NEP 2020? And for that, we have to define the mode of education. We have to understand the importance of role of technology in education. And we have to also understand that teachers will be acting as facilitators with ICT tools, and such teachers can definitely make a difference. That's what is the importance of ICT in education. So there can be e-learning or online learning, where there can be ICT, which brings inclusion, which promotes higher order skill thinking, subject learning, and which can also help develop ICT literacy and ICT capability. So it also encourages collaboration with these tools. It can motivate learning. It can improve engagement and knowledge retention. It can be act as effective differentiation instruction technology, and can be a key part of the national curriculum. Okay, so with this we develop ICT capability and literacy. We can also improve the attainment levels, and we can prepare students for integrated society dominated by ICT development and for lifelong learning. So these are learning with technological tools. There are likes, experiences, self-learning, original thoughts, example classes, awareness, feedback, and most importantly, independent and creative thinking. This is the most important, which I have shown with a cloud of yellow color. This has led to, like we are talking about Industry 4.0, which talks about autonomy. We are also talking about Industry 4. Education 4.0, which also brings the autonomy in education. And I think pandemic has taught us this in a very significant manner, the role of technology in education, which has, as I said sometime back, has become a new normal. So whether we like it or don't like it, we are these days, even now also we are using a technological tool, Zoom, to deliver this class. So we are using, and we have to use in future, and we have to maybe change the way we have been generating and disseminating education, so that we can be effective torch bearers of NEP 2020, and we should be able to maybe teach the students the role of technology in education. And if we say we are able to grant autonomy to education, that's what we call as education 4.0. So it's a technology based education which aligns itself with the Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution. So this is a revolution which focuses on smart technology, AI, robotics. Most importantly, I say, if I define Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution, which it has like only maybe a decade and a half back old, the single word which can define Industry 4.0 or fourth industrial revolution is autonomy. So autonomy is differentiator between the first, second, third industrial revolution and the fourth industrial revolution on the other side. So this refers to intelligent networking of machines. So same way, when we talk of intelligent networking of machines, same way if we have intelligent network of creative ideas, that in human brains, that's what you call as education 4.0. Okay, there are certain examples which I'm not going to discuss in detail. Like for example, in Leeds University, Becky is there. In Northampton, they talk of active blended learning. Bolton College has created a campus chat box called EDA, and there are many more examples. So education 4.0 will support industry 4.0, and when education catches up with the technological advancement of fourth industrial revolution, it will be serving as a key enabler of not only generation and dissemination of education, but also advancement of technology also. So with this, with education 4.0, we'll be able to create a wider base of higher skilled workers. That means the jobs which are lost because of industry 4.0, they are upgraded, and it will reduce the shortages of workforces in critical sectors. We have to not only change the curriculum of HEIs, but also change the school curriculum also. And we must focus on hybrid or blended mode of learning. Like for example, if you look at the hybrid mode of the e-learning, is which depends upon audiovisual materials, search engines, electronic libraries, website, that is basically use of internet technologies. But when you talk of blended learning, so you have, if you build an e-commerce culture, There's a role of a teacher, there's a role of administrator, there's a role of learner. The teacher will develop knowledge and skill, understand learning, facilitate learning, creating opportunities. Learners, the student will be self-directed, self-motivated, self-regulating, and as a student, it will be lifelong learning. So teacher is also a learner, and learner can also become a teacher. And the administrator, which provide a proper infrastructure and platform for these lifelong resources. So blended learning is all, which is also known as hybrid learning, which integrates technology and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities. So as a teacher, if I use both chalk and talk technology as well as maybe internet-based examples or 3D models or 3D printed physical models that we talk about. This is also, we have been talking about a new mode of teaching, what we call as a flipped classroom. So in a flipped classroom, the education material is available to students a priori. Students come after learning that material, and in the classroom under the able guidance of the teacher, they just do some exercises, they practice those knowledge, they create some projects, they create some prototype, they interact, they do group discussions. So they teacher is not teaching them subject, but that is available on the internet. Students learn and they practice in the right direction, the right sense under the guidance of teacher in the class. That's what is called the flipped classrooms. So in blended learnings, so the teaching is both because of online learning as well as the learning which takes place in the instructor-led classrooms. So this is an example of blended learning. You have a classroom training, you have e-learning, and there's like this is an example of a blender who is blending connected learning, online learning, global connections, project-based learning, as well as with face-to-face learning. So this is like what we call as a blended learning. But a big question is, why is this all required? The reason is that if you look at the current time, then there is no greater time of need for the social, economic, and environmental improvement than today. And I don't feel there's a better person to make these changes in society, in economy, in environment, other than a teacher. So because with the technology, the teacher is not only the creator of knowledge wealth as well as depository of knowledge wealth, but he or she also influences the behavior of the society, the values of the society. And I'm very close to talk my finishing before ma'am says to finish it up. I'll just summarize that through this model, if you see this, like for example, most of the time students do not know what has been covered in the education courses. If you look at this figure, which is more like practicing by hand, what we call internship, or like working in a field, actual ground level, which we call as learning through practice, or maybe supervised learning, we must be able to generate new and new ideas. We must be able to go for a creative thinkers, creative thought process, or high skilled knowledge generators and graspers. And finally, I would say we can also be assessor. The assessment can be also done with the help of technology in the form of, for example, evaluation by mentors, learning curve, or experience by jury, presentation, reports, and many more. So the role of technology in education, particularly with the background of NEP 2020, is tremendous. And as a teacher, we have to understand the importance and make it practice. Otherwise, a very good document like NEP 2020 will be lost, and that will be a big loss for the country. Thank you very much. That's all from my side. We still have maybe around 5 minutes, 4 minutes left. So I can take quick questions if anybody has.